Welcome to the Rex Andrews Show. Glad to have you with us. If you are a first-time listener, excited to have you in the conversation. Don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to give us stars. Now, I am a beggar. I will not bashful. I will beg for ratings. In fact, I have a caller on today, so I'll say I'm a well-dressed beggar. So give us some of those stars because it helps us in the podcast stores. Want to thank everybody who's been listening, and for those return listeners today. Because of you, we've cracked the top 10% of the fastest growing podcasts in the world. We have listeners in 32 countries on 6 continents and in over 400 cities. So we're pretty excited the growth of the show, and it's all because of you. Now, don't forget to stop by the show website. We have profiles on all of our guests, including our guest today. That way, because when we start to talk to folks that we have on the show, we only can get to a portion of their story. So their links to their business, those types of things are always on the website. So go to the show site at rexandrewshow.com. You can also find us on all the major social media platforms. Okay, got an exciting one today. I am excited about this person coming on the show. I've known her a long time. But that doesn't qualify her for the show because I only do interesting people doing interesting things. And so I'd like to bring onto this show someone that I have a lot of admiration for. And if I were to say one word that would describe her, I would say it's probably unconventional. She has done a lot of interesting things. So before I throw out the name, okay, and where she's at, and in fact, I will warn you today, this show is coming live from the Virgin Islands in St. Croix. So we might have some festivities going on in the background. You never know in a tropical setting. So let me run down a few things that I know about Kathy that are kind of fun that make her unique. Okay, so she's a serial entrepreneur, okay, and she owns what I would call a micro resort down there in the Virgin Islands. She has multiple locations. She's a serial entrepreneur, done a lot of different things. She's been a bar owner. And this one we're going to talk about today for just a minute or two. She was a professional roller derby athlete. Okay, I don't think many of you have met a professional roller derby athlete in our audience. She's a mother. Okay, one of the most important titles. She is an escapee of the States, so she went down to the Virgin Islands and has run a very successful business. And the one story we're going to talk about today is she's a hurricane survivor. She went through a full Category 5 hurricane just a few years back. So I'd like to welcome to the show, Kathy Tiddark. Kathy, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
It's fantastic to get you on the show for a while. It's been a bit. And again, I know as we've done business and stuff over the years, just how much fun you have getting good internet connection down there in St. Croix.
Yeah, it actually is not too bad, but I think the internet's a little bit more reliable than the phone service right now.
Yeah, well, basic utilities and infrastructure are completely different down there than what we experience back here. Now,
I used to joke that it's a little beach town stuck in the 80s, and you have to remember that with anything having to do with technology, especially technology.
Yeah, technology. Now, I will be transparent and go and let people know I have known Kathy for a little over 40 years. We first met in junior high. And that has no reason why that she's on the show today. And she's just an incredible person. And so we want to tell her story today because success doesn't fall out of the sky. With her. So on the show today, the show is always about the stories of people. Okay, so we're going to go back and learn lots of things, and I'm going to throw out a list here, Kathy, and don't worry, I'll ask you the questions. So
okay.
Okay, so I want to know where you were born, okay, and then I'm going to also know where you grew up because now I know some about that, but our audience doesn't. And where you grow up is important because it adds to who we are. I had a guest who moved 63 times before the age of 15. So we want to talk about that. Want to know what your parents did as you grew up, what types of influences that parental environment was. Also your siblings, do you have siblings? Do you have siblings that survived your harassment, stuff like that? What you did as a youth growing up. So if you were involved in sports or dance or swimming or photography or shoplifting, and don't laugh, I had a guest who actually, by the time he was 15, was a car thief. So I've seen a lot of through the interviews. Then we want to bounce around and kind of learn about some of the things you've done in life. I surely want to spend a couple minutes talking to you about the roller derby days, and you've owned a bar, and now you're down in the tropics, and you own basically, I refer you to as your micro resorts down there. And so let's go back in time, Kathy, and tell us where you were born.
I was actually born at the Air Force Academy base in Colorado Springs.
I didn't know that.
My dad was a major, but he retired in 1968. So I was only 3.
Okay.
And that was when we moved up to the metro area. Most of my childhood and growing up was in Golden. I moved there in 1976.
Okay.
And elementary school, junior high, high school, college, everything there in town. Ended up buying a house in Golden and raised my kids. And now one of my children is actually living in the house that I built and was in for 30 years. So that's kind of cool too.
So let's unpack a little of that. For those who are listening and don't know, she's mentioning Golden, Colorado, the home of the original Coors Brewery and the Colorado School of Mines. So that we did know each other from being the hometown there. But so back in the day, after your father retired, what type of work was he doing? And then what did your mom do?
My mom was a homemaker and dad was a pharmacist for a while after he retired. And then that's my one rooster is just being obnoxious.
That's fine.
They have no idea what it means for time of day. They just crow all the time.
Yeah.
He was a stockbroker at E.F. Hutton in Denver for a long time until he completely retired.
Okay.
And
fantastic. This is going to be a great episode. I've never had a rooster crowing.
Rooster in the background.
There's awesome. Okay. So how would you describe, now, how many siblings do you have?
I have, there's 6 of us total.
Okay.
An older sister, an older brother, and 2 younger brothers.
Okay. So
wait, that's only 5. Why did I think there was 6? Oh, because I count my mom. Never mind. That's silly. There's only 5 of us.
five kids. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you describe your relationship with your siblings growing up? Were you close? Was it, kind of arm's length? What did the family life look like for you?
Yeah, it was a little bit, I don't even know how to describe it. Let's see, mom was a single mom from about 76 on. That's when we moved into Golden. And she was looking for, a quiet home town to let the kids grow up in. My 2 little brothers were a handful. They were always into everything. Privacy was hard. We, didn't have a huge house to live in. I always had to share a bedroom with the sister. And so, yeah, there was 4 of us from the time we moved to Golden. My older brother had been off on his own by then. Okay. So it was just the rest of us. But I guess it would be a pretty average single parent family, in Golden. Back then, we could go play outside, run around, do anything, didn't worry about being out past dark or any of the odd stuff that happens right now,
as kids, we lived at the Golden Pool. It was crazy.
Yeah. The pool, I remember my mom used to take us to the skating rink in in Wadsworth. That was Skate City. So that would be Lakewood. She'd just take us there on Friday nights and leave us. And I was in 6th grade. I was 12. And yeah, same with the pool. We would have our season pass and all the kids would just go hang out at the pool while the parents were at work and it wasn't a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to mention that. Just about everybody I knew had a season pass at the pool. Mm-hmm. We rode our bikes down there. We rarely wore shoes during the summer. You might have some flip-flops on. And, you didn't get home until just after dark, usually, or even worse. Yeah. So, Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For those who don't know, Golden is kind of a quaint little town. At that time, it was probably 10 to 12,000 people that lived there. You know, everybody knew everybody type of place. You could pretty much hike or ride your bike anywhere, you know, walk or
Yeah.
ride your bike anywhere. So it was a pretty safe environment for kids to grow up in. Okay. So after high school, what was your next pop? What did you do after school?
Let's see. I worked for an attorney's office for a while. I thought I wanted to be an attorney until I realized that I would probably end up working for the public defender and not have a life or money or anything. So I think that was around the time when I started my first, I guess, business on my own. I actually went to work for someone else. I was going to college and I was looking for a way to be at home with the kids during the day instead of having to take them to daycare or anything. My youngest, Brianna, took her first steps at the babysitters, and that just broke my heart.
Yeah.
So I started waitressing at the Golden Eagle Saloon of all places. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And on Main Street, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I waitressed at Golden Eagle Saloon. And that made, between that and my husband's income and not having to pay daycare, that allowed me to be at home with the kids in the daytime.
Nice.
And then I remembered seeing a girl coming through the bar selling roses all the time.
Okay.
And I thought, that's interesting. And I talked to her a little bit. She said, yeah, I just go from bar to bar and sell roses. And I'm like, what? And at one point I decided to just like try working for her.
Okay.
And it was crazy how, I mean, you literally, your own boss going around in the bars selling roses. I want to say she paid me like $10 an hour or something. And that was back in 1988 plus tips. And so it was decent money.
Decent money, yeah.
And at one point she kind of dropped off the face of the earth. And I learned how to run the business to keep it going and started hiring girls. And it just kind of went from there to where I did it on my own. And I ended up just, God, that went on for almost 20 years. I want to say I did it for a long time. Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah. It was a great little business to be able to be around with the kids. I could work Friday and Saturday night if I wanted to. I didn't have to work. I had, girls that worked for me. And so, yeah, that was kind of the start of it.
Okay. So I just have to ask and bring you up to these days. How did you get into roller derby? I just dying to know. I mean, I know you did it, but I want to know, how'd you get there?
So in high school, I was always a klutz. I did not play any sports at all. I couldn't run. I was slow. I couldn't play basketball. You would think I could because my height. Track, I would trip over the hurdles. I wasn't coordinated to do anything. And we didn't have swimming because we didn't have a pool.
Right.
So yeah, so that was kind of, the one thing that I probably would have wanted. Okay, there's sirens. Now the dog's going to start howling.
Okay, well, we'll see how
Give her
far
a
we
minute.
get.
Just warning you. So think back to, I think it was 2000 when all the writers went on strike.
Mm-hmm.
The writers for TV shows and stuff.
Yep.
Do you remember that? The writer's strike of all.
Yeah, the writer's strike.
Like 2000,
absolutely.
2001. And we're like, well, what the heck are we going to watch if there's not going to be any TV? And then people started doing those reality shows, and it's like, who in the heck wants to watch what?
Yeah.
And I think it was A&E did what was it called? I think it was called Roller Girls in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And it was actually about a group of girls that started playing derby again. And they were kind of the start of the entire resurgence of what would be the current roller derby, I guess, which is also, it just continued to evolve. So I watched that show and I was like, what the heck is this? They looked like they had fun, and I never really had more than a couple of girlfriends all through junior high and high school, and just the whole idea of having a bunch of girls doing something like this, and they did everything. They set up the track, they did all the recruiting, the training, and it was just really interesting to me. Fast forward maybe 2 years later, and this was back when MySpace was out. So
Yep.
we're
Yep.
going way back. We're dating ourselves.
Yep.
I had a friend on MySpace who had, in the middle of her name, it said MILF Shake.
Okay.
And I was like, what? Or maybe at one point she was Southern. Oh, I think she was Southern Belle Hell was her first name. And I asked her, I'm like, are you in a band or something? You know, what do you do? Why you got that name? And she goes, oh, I play roller derby. And I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah.
She says, I play roller derby. And I said, what, here in Denver? And she goes, yeah. I'm just like, get out of here. I said, where? And she goes, at the Wagon Wheel up in Brighton. You want to go to a practice one time? And I'm like, yeah. So I went to one practice and that's all it took.
That's all it
One
took.
practice and I was hooked. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, did you have a pseudo name or a moniker as Kathy?
Yeah, everybody, when it first started, everybody was doing, you know, the names and it was hard. I actually chose Granny Apple because I was a grandma at that point. I want to say, I think I was 46 when I started skating.
Okay.
45.
Right.
I don't know. It was 2006. Let's see if I can count backwards from there. Anywho, but I was a grandma and I wanted to skate on the Bad Apples team because I just thought they were the bomb. So I picked the name Granny Apple. And I actually ended up getting drafted onto the Bad Apples. So it worked out.
So how long did you do roller derby?
About 8 years.
You're
and then
kidding.
the last 2 years was, yeah, I was over 50 when I was still skating. And they actually they've got groups now on Facebook. It started Derby after 40, then Derby over 50, and Derby over 60, and then to 70.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I gotta give, yeah, that's why my knees are bad now. I gotta give kudos to anyone going on with it any longer than that.
Was it as butt kicking as it looked? I mean, was it really that?
Yeah, and that was the hardest part, was actually getting the recognition that it was a real sport.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people said, oh, it's like WWE, and I'm like, no, it's not. You know, I actually dislocated my shoulder in a fall one time so bad that it was like over in here.
Yeah.
And the way my arm was, I was sure I had broke my humerus. And no, I dislocated the shoulder, and I have, you know, my first surgery marks from that injury. Lots of broken ankles and broken legs, and those were always gnarly. As the sport progressed from the hard hits to more technical skating,
right,
which is what they do now, there was different ways. I don't know how to explain. We did not see hardly any real bad injuries, breaks, anything like that in probably the first 5 years of skating. But once the derby changed to a very technical skating is when the injuries started happening, because they'd get caught, you know, turning a weird way or jumping the apex or whatever, come down wrong. And the next thing you know, you have a compound fracture on your ankle. So that was, it got pretty intense. We had at one point, Denver had 2 competitive leagues at the same time. And I want to say they still do. I mean, with COVID, it's gotten, obviously everything's been on hold for
sure
ever. I don't think that I think they're just now getting ready to start going back to practices. But they actually, ESPN3, I think it was showing a lot of the games for a while, which was really nice to finally get the recognition for the girls that did so much work to get to actually play. And we didn't get paid to do it. You could say professional if you want to, but we actually paid money to play. We had to pay dues. We had to pick up the costs of whatever wasn't getting covered for our practice space, buy all your own pads and gear and skates. And my oldest daughter skated with me for a while. We actually had a couple bouts against each other. That was fun. And then my husband Randy's daughter was 7 when we got married. She is going to be 18 in just a couple of weeks. And she started skating on the league that I used to skate with back in 2012, I think it was. She started with the junior derbies. So now she's going to be 18, and she's like, Dad asked her if she was going to go back to skating, and she goes, well, I'm going to be 18, and so I don't know if I have to go with the big girls or if I can stay where I'm at. And she's a big girl. So she is tall, and she's had to play with it. That's one of the issues that I had too. When you're playing against the tiny little girls, who are usually the jammers, you have to be really careful because you're always going to get an illegal block against them.
Right.
So she's been skating for, 6 years with all these little kids. And now I think she's like, not sure if she wants to go up into the big girls league or not. But
Right.
that was kind of cool that 2 of the kids ended up
That's
following and doing it. And now here on island, there's actually one of the bar owners here. She was an original founding member of Houston Roller Girls. And then there's a second one too, which is also a bar owner. It's kind of funny how the girls end up, derby and bars go together. Another bar owner is a former derby girl. So they have a little fun group that skates here now. And I had my skates chipped down, but I just had both my knees redone, and they're not anywhere near ready to be getting on roller skates.
Well, that's a good segue. You became a bar owner. Let's talk about that for just a couple minutes.
From bars through the time, and it kind of, I don't know if it piggybacked off the Rose business or what, but con by a couple of build a bar, and it didn't quite work right. And I had to learn how to do. I knew nothing about running bars. I wasn't a bartender. Other than waitressing, I knew nothing, and certainly not a bar that had a restaurant. So yeah, I put my money up for this bar, and the 2 guys that were supposed to be running it knew what they were doing, didn't do much but drink and play and listen to the bands and play pool and anything but, run a bar. So I learned the hard way how to do it. And that place ended up closing. And then I owned 2 more after that. Another one I tried again with partners, didn't work. I was never a big drinker. So that's one of the biggest things with bars. Most bar owners are drinkers. So if you have one partner that is a drinker and one that's not, you're going to have issues. So the final one I did, which actually was the best and the most profitable, I did 100% on my own.
Okay.
And that was my last one. And that's the only one that I actually was able to sell, that I didn't end up closing down on my own because it wasn't doing what it needed to stay open. But I sold that place to move down to the Virgin Islands.
Okay. So when did you move down to the Virgin Islands? What year was that?
In 2014.
Okay. Now you sold your bar and you headed there. Did you have in mind purchasing your first, I guess, bed and breakfast type place or rental place, or did you just head down? What was the plan?
We used to come down here on vacation, and hubby and I got married in the Grand Cayman Islands, and he had never been to a real ocean before. He was from Galveston, Texas, and that is not the ocean.
No.
So he fell in love with the Caribbean, and I always just kind of knew I would end up somewhere warm, and I love the ocean. I love Colorado, but the only thing it was missing was the warmer weather. As I got older, the cold. I skied and I snowboarded when I was younger, but I lost interest and I got tired of shoveling snow. And I got tired of the cold. It's funny because Randy is actually in Colorado right now, and he's whining because he's freezing, and it snowed this morning.
Yes, I look out my window and there's about 2 inches of snow on my neighbor's roof. So,
I just kind of had to laugh at him. He's like, "I'm so cold. I just want to come home." We're recording this on May 11th. And yes, there is snow on the ground in Denver this morning. So yes, and that is one of the reasons I moved.
So when you got there, did you already have in mind purchasing your first place, or?
Well, here's how it worked out. We came down vacation a couple different times, and we always stayed 2 weeks. And the third time we came down, we actually started looking to buy. And there's that darn rooster again.
Yeah.
We originally were just looking at a single family home. And here, all single family homes usually have a mother-in-law suite or a cottage. Almost any house here they call cottages, and some are like 4 bedrooms. It's like, that's not a cottage, it's a freaking house.
Yeah, it's a house.
So right. I looked at a lot of stuff online. And then one day I don't know how I ended up on the commercial real estate listings and started finding stuff. And I was like, why in the heck is commercial property so cheap? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, you could buy a multi-unit building for less than a single family house.
Yeah.
So we decided to look at those type of buildings. So we actually had a contract on the place we ended up buying the last visit that we were here, and we went back to Colorado and, you know, waited to see if they were going to accept the contract and then decide from there what we would do and how quickly we would get down.
Yeah. Now, so tell us a little about your place. Your place has quite the history. What year was it built?
The original part of it is 1786.
Wow. And you've got 3-foot walls in some of it, right?
Yeah, I could probably, I don't know if you want me to go mobile a little bit. And,
no, that's okay.
No, not really.
We're stable enough at this point in time. Let's stay there. Okay.
So it's built with coral cut stone, which is actually out of the ocean. So one of the first times I was down at the ocean, one of the beaches we like to go to, it looked like someone poured this big slab of concrete right on the edge of the water. And I'm like, what in the heck is that? Mm-hmm. And upon closer look, it's actually, they're slabs of coral. And over time, they get, I don't want to say smooth, but they just turn into these big, it's like a concrete pad. I don't know how else to explain it. Yeah. So what they did back in the 1700s to build these buildings is they would go down to the water and they would break those pieces off in blocks. Huh. And so the building itself there's stone, and then there's the pieces of the coral. There's fossils in it. It's really interesting to look at it. It's quite, and then to think about what it took to cut that and haul it up, 3-4 blocks and build.
Yeah, in the 1700s, the late 1700s. Yeah. That's
and
crazy.
The other interesting thing that a lot of the places are built with, and ours is too, and it's probably too far behind me to see, but we kind of, sort of, the stairs back there, they're built with Danish brick. And the Danish brick got here as ballast in the boats. They would sail from Denmark over here, and they had to put weight in the boat. So they would throw all the bricks down in the holding. Yep. And then they would get here to pick up the rum and the cotton and all of the exports, and they would throw all the brick out of the boat, and they built with the brick.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah. So the buildings are, especially in the waterfront towns, the first, 2, 3, 4 blocks are all a combination of brick in the stairwells, the arched windows above all of the homes. All the lower levels were always built with the coral cut stone and then the Danish brick.
The Danish brick.
And in doing so, yeah. So when they built them, originally all of the lower levels of the houses, most of them, if you had carriages and horses and that sort of thing, that was what was in the lower level of the buildings. So they built the walls really thick I'm sure for coolness, keep it nice and cool for the animals. That was also where their dry storage was, and they put their carts. And then as time went on and people started living, they built, the second floor was built with just most places were built stick built for the second floors.
Mm-hmm. Now, your place is over there in Frederiksted. That's a little more off the beaten path than most of the places in St. Croix or in the Virgin Islands, right?
Yeah, so our island is probably the quietest of all of them. Frederiksted is definitely the quiet town. We have the cruise ship pier here, but even when the ships were coming before COVID, we didn't get nearly what. I mean, in St. Thomas, they get like 5 or 6 a day. Over here, if we got 3 a week, that was big.
But you have some of the most beautiful beaches right there too,
yeah,
and it's not overdeveloped.
We're on the west end where all of the nice flat water is, the sand. 2 miles from our place is Sandy Point, which is the National Wildlife Preserve for sea turtles. Mm-hmm. And it's the major nesting ground for leatherback sea turtles in the Caribbean. It's one of the biggest areas that they go to. So that is totally protected there.
So people that can follow along, throw out your website for us just so people can find your place. I mean, you have an amazing business there.
I have a Facebook page, but I don't have a website.
Okay, yeah.
That's another story.
Yep.
We do most of our stuff through Airbnb, but because we've been here for 7 years, we have a lot of repeat customers that just reach out personally to us. We can be found on Facebook at Caribbean Breeze Apartments and Vacation Homes, and also on Google. If you do Google, any Google search with the whole, you have to go Caribbean Breeze Apartments, and then it'll usually fill in the rest. So we have the Facebook page, and then I have like 6 different listings on Airbnb, but those are just a pain to, I have not figured out an easy way to share any of our stuff without having the actual link for the Airbnb.
Well, let's fast forward a little bit now. Your first property there, how many units do you have there that people can rent?
There's 9 units. We have 3 long-term, and then we have 6 vacation rentals.
Fantastic.
And they're 1-bedrooms and studios. There's 2 studios and 4 1-bedrooms, and they're all completely updated. This place was rebuilt on the 2nd floor in 1970 by the gentleman that we bought it from. But he hadn't done anything since 1970. So the colors and just everything. Yeah. So we went in and you know, updated the bathrooms and the kitchens and flooring and paint and all new furniture. And
so
and
I want
came with it.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. This brings authenticity to the program, that's for sure. So I want to fast forward up a little bit to what happened during the Hurricane Maria. I want you to tell us that story. But not a whole lot of people have lived through a hurricane, because that was a Cat 5, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, and I had a lot of friends here that lived through that Cat 5. When you're on a small island, and especially an island that, you know, is a tourist, a vacation destination, when there's a storm coming, you don't just get up and leave. You can't. There were vacationers that got stuck here. We actually had, I want to say we had 4 vacationers here that I asked them to leave beforehand and they didn't want to. If I back up a little bit, Hurricane Irma came first.
Okay. And
Hurricane Irma on September 5th was headed directly for us. And at the last second, literally the absolute last second that it could turn, it took a tiny little turn to the north and skirted by us as a Cat 3, but on the north end of the island, the north shore, instead of on our side. And it hit St. John, St. Thomas, and then the BVI's head on as a Cat 5 and just wiped them out. It was bad. Our island spent the next 10 days-ish basically sending over everything we had here for them, because they had nothing. I mean, it wiped out the islands. So they're our sister islands. St. Thomas and St. John are our sisters. So a lot of the dive companies, the tour companies that do the Buck Island trips, all of that, even our ferry, they loaded them up with water and generators and tarps and everything. We just sent everything over to St. Thomas and St. John. And on the way back over, they were bringing people that wanted to be evacuated. They were coming to our island. The animal shelter over there sent all of their pets that they had at the shelter. About 5 days into this 10-day period, Maria was forming. So we were keeping an eye on that, but everyone was thinking there is no way in heck that a second Cat 5 is going to come hit the Virgin Islands. And keep in mind, 10 days apart. Wow. But unfortunately, that's what happened. On day number 9, we said goodbye to the one cruise ship that had come here instead of St. Thomas. And the Coast Guard sent a ship to take people off island, and I tried to get our guests to go. And then we found out about a Mercy flight that took all the college kids off the night before. My daughter and grandkids were visiting then, and they had been trying to get off the island since Irma hit, and all the flights were messed up and they couldn't get off. They got off on the last commercial flight the day before Hurricane Maria hit. Wow. And I'd say the grandkids were only like 6 and 7 then, so thank God we got them off. But the Coast Guard cutter would have taken anyone from here. They were on our pier. And because my guests had been here through Irma, they're like, oh, you'll take care of us. We don't want to leave.
Oh, no.
I'm like, no, you don't understand. This one, no, you do not. You don't even understand it. This one's not going to move at the last second. And we had seen what Irma did in St. Thomas and St. John, and Irma hit during the daytime. Maria was coming at night. The hardest part of it was supposed to be between 11 and 1:30 a.m., which meant in the dark. So yeah, it was pretty terrifying. So we got everybody into the rooms, and we had all the storm shutters up, and we passed out walkie-talkies to keep in touch, and we just got ready. About 11 o'clock was when it started getting really bad, and our governor had shut all power off at 2 p.m. in the afternoon and did a curfew to have everybody in off the streets. So about 11:30, we were still watching the news, seeing what it was doing, and then our satellite dish went away. And it's stuff you don't think about. We didn't think that we should like take the satellite dish off the roof. Right. You know, we're like, we need to see what's going on. How are we going to get news if the dish is gone? Another rookie mistake. We had the generator sitting outside because, you know, you don't put it in. And I asked my husband, I'm like, shouldn't it be undercover or something? He goes, no, it's a generator. It's meant for storms. No, you don't leave a generator outside in a hurricane and rain, and oh my God, rookie mistakes. So, you know, Irma helped teach us some of what to do, but we still were not prepared for Maria. So we lost the generator and the satellite dish. By midnight, it was dark, other than, you know, what we had for our batteries and the lights in the house that were battery operated. Good old AT&T worked all the way through the storm. I do not know how, but the tower stayed up. I was actually talking and texting my sister all the way through the storm, through the night. 1:30, it was supposed to be, the worst of it was supposed to be done. And it didn't stop. It was just like, it felt like an elephant was sitting on you. And I was chatting with my sister, and I'm like, she goes, just hang on. I go, I don't know how much more of this our building can take. Because we were downstairs in our part, which is underneath the Danish stairs, and it's got the 3-foot thick walls. The shutters are up, so you can't see out. I had one little area that I could crank it open a tiny little bit and just kind of peek up over to see what was going on. And all I could see was all the trees around me doing this, just going in circles. And behind us is our fire department. So they had a generator and they had a light. And the light was what I was seeing, the trees moving around. I couldn't really hear anything. I did try and step out on a private patio once. And just the way that this building was built, the sounds were kept away from us, which I'm thankful of, because I heard some video, you know, after the fact that was just horrific sounds. At one point, the family that was in one of the units were talking on the walkie-talkies, and the son is like, my mom keeps trying to go outside. She swears she hears a kid screaming for their mom. And I'm like, do not let your mother go outside. It's not, I can guarantee you there's nobody outside. It's the wind. The wind is just howling, and that's just what it sounds like. And at one point he's like, oh, your neighbor's roof just blew into the yard. Oh, wait a minute, it's gone. No, wait a minute, it's back again. And after a couple hours, all of our walkie-talkies the batteries died. So I couldn't even talk to anybody in the other rooms. And one of them, the last conversation I had with the two in our front studio, was there was water starting to come in around the ceiling fan. And I'm like, wait, which ceiling fan? This is important, because one is by the entry and the other one is way back in the room. And if it's way back in the room, we got a big problem. Right. And walkie-talkies went bad. They just went dead. It was not until 5:30, 6 o'clock that everything stopped in the morning. It went way longer. So what we found out, what happened was the hurricane basically stalled out a couple miles offshore from us and just kind of sat there, and it did what they call the eye wall replacement cycle. Yep. And this was back when they were still not understanding that was actually a thing, that hurricanes could stall out and just completely rebuild themselves.
Just sit there as in a wash, just going round and round and round.
Yeah. And then you have the one area where the original eye was, and then right next to it you have the other, and they're kind of feeding up. They're throwing off tornadoes. So when I was talking to my sister, I'm like, I can't do this anymore, Anne. And she goes, hang on, I'm in a chat room. Oh my God, go to the safest part of the house. And I'm like, seriously? So we got the Cat5 hurricane, and now we're going to deal with tornadoes on top of that. And yeah, so it was a long night, to say the least. And it was pretty shocking when we came out. There was not a single piece of green anything as far as the eye could see. And we had a big tamarind tree, which I still have the base of it sitting here. My dog's chasing the rooster. A tamarind tree that was probably 150 feet tall and at least that old come down. But we were extremely lucky. We did not lose any of our roof. All of our solar panels stayed intact. We lost all of our gutters, which meant no water for any time, soon, except for what we had in the cisterns. And when I got up and went through my yard, I found that my neighbor's entire roof of their house had flipped upside down and landed in my yard, just inches away from our pool, the building. It didn't do anything other than take out a big tree. So
yeah, I can remember just after that happened on Facebook, you'd posted some pictures and stuff, and it was just devastation. Devastation.
It was funny because we never thought of leaving. The thought wasn't, we got to get out of here. It was just looking around and going, where in the heck do we start? How do you even start to clean up this mess? It was just, and then I went out front and I saw my 83-year-old neighbor across the street upstairs, and she was in the middle floor, and the whole entire upstairs roof and windows had blown out and landed on our cars and our building. And she was getting water in her house because there was no roof above her anymore. And she just started sweeping. She took buckets and was catching the water that was dripping in her house. And then she was washing her clothes and that. And I was like, oh my gosh, if she can do this, we can do it. And so we just started clearing stuff from around the house and went from there. But it was a long haul.
You were without utilities for quite some time, right?
Yeah. So the city water was off for, gosh, I think that was the longest. The city water was off for at least 3 months.
3 months.
But we had a cistern. We were lucky. We had a cistern and it did not get contaminated by the storm. One of the things you're supposed to do is remove your downspouts so that the salt water doesn't get into the cistern and contaminate the water. Right. Well, our gutters went so early on that there wasn't any way for any of the water to get into the cistern. So we were lucky we had that. And we had our whole swimming pool too.
Yeah.
And I treated it. That's one of the first things I did was treat the pool with, I had like 40 gallons. We were going into the stores and buying all the bleach we could find and cleaning supplies, and everybody else was buying beer and cigarettes and thinking everything was going to turn back on the next day. The utilities, as far as the power went, was out. We were 71 days. We were actually like one of the last of 3 buildings in town to get turned on, because the way the new power lines were put in, we happened to be at the very end of the line. Yeah. So we waited for a long time, but we had generators, so we were lucky. We had generators to run what we needed. Like I said, AT&T was amazing. They never went down. It got to a point where we could only get information in and out from like 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. because that's when most everybody was asleep, I'm guessing, or trying to sleep. And so we could get information out. And then actually about 5 days in, we realized that the cable was still on, our internet, because all the lines in town, I guess, a lot of them are buried, or I don't know. But it was weird because we went into the one place that opened up to do a warm meal, and he picked up his remote control. He goes, wouldn't it be crazy if I turned this on and it worked? And he turned it on and it worked. We're like, what the heck? Yeah. But then when they started coming through town to take down all the old lines, the wires and the poles and stuff, it went they cut whatever the main thing was that was still coming in. And then it took months and months to get any internet back.
So supplies were pretty hard to get at that point in time, right? After the storm?
Yeah, because the biggest deal was we sent everything that we had over to the other islands.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we were working on minimal. We had a water filtration system, so that was the biggest thing, was water. We were okay on food and that sort of thing, but as far as building, you know, the things that you need, chainsaws and tarps and anything having to do with building, yeah, there just was none of that happening. It was a long haul.
Yeah, because you have a Home Depot on the island there, but they ran out of supplies almost immediately, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I lost you for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, I lost you for 2 seconds. Yeah, we have a Home Depot. The Home Depot, if I remember right, so we were on, for a long time, the curfew was only like 4 hours a day they would allow you to go out. And it took all of that 4 hours just to get gas for your generators. So nobody was even trying to do anything else. It was go stand in line to get gas and get water and get food. So, you know, again, we were lucky. We didn't really need anything from a Home Depot. They didn't have generators or anything. They never, that's the weird thing, is prior to the storm, nobody stocked generators here.
Yeah.
It's always in the back of your mind that there's going to be a storm. And every year they remind you that you have to be prepared for it. You have to have your generator, check your generator. Most people didn't even own a generator. You know,
Yeah.
It's an extra $400, $500 that people that live here can't afford to purchase. So now they're everywhere. Every single store has them,
one.
which is good. Yeah. Yeah, because it was a hot commodity for a while. And it is something, it takes a big storm like that to remind people that you do need to be prepared. I mean, we're lucky. There's natural disasters everywhere, and people, the biggest question I'm asked is, how can you live somewhere that you're going to be in the constant threat of hurricanes? And I was like, stateside gets hit way more than we do. I mean, it's the biggest difference is if you're stateside, you can get out of the way. You know, here you can't leave, but the buildings were built to withstand. You know, they knew about hurricanes back 300 years ago, because they built these buildings, and most of them are still standing.
Still standing after all that time.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Looking back, what lessons did you really learn going through this hurricane? I mean, you talked earlier about rookie mistakes. Yeah,
well, definitely to be prepared. Period. You don't wait till the last second to do anything. Like we were still using the old, nail the plywood up over the windows thing, and that's no fun on a second floor. No. So the very first thing we did once we were able to get materials was to purchase and build shutters that are there all the time. So all we have to do is pull out the pins and lower them down, and then use the sundogs to attach them to keep them closed.
Okay.
So that was one of the biggest things. Making sure we have a working generator.
Yeah.
Any place to put it with, if we need to use it for an extended period of time.
Okay. Do you stock up on foods then a little more now?
Yeah, we usually, for the most part, I don't do it until about August-ish. Our active time is August, September.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the biggest thing right now is we decided to move west because they're not huge, but we have 1,000-foot tall mountains behind us.
Right.
And when you live on an island, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
In general, storms don't come from the south on this island. Very rare for them to come down the south. And that's the dirty side of the storm. That's the most destructive side of the storm. More often than not, especially the last few years, all the storms have been going below us, which just that's a whole nother story, going to, global warming and just things that are happening in our world to change. And I've seen it just in the 7 years we've been here. We never had a storm go to the south of us. And no one could remember any storms going to the south that actually came close enough to us to do anything. That's also why our, the whole eastern coastline, Florida, the Gulf, is getting so many more storms because
Mhm.
they're heading off of Africa and they're going to the south instead of going to the north. The trade, or not the trade winds, the jet stream used to push storms coming off of Africa up to the north. So they would hit way above any of the islands and then basically get pushed off of the US and stay out in the ocean.
Yeah.
But now all it takes is that one little bit, you know, even to cut across our island halfway, and they head into the waters of the US. So, yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, every year we're gonna just fortify a little bit more. I know if we ever have another bad storm coming, I will do my best to get every single person off that is here.
Yeah.
It's funny because the family that was here was moving here. They didn't have intentions of leaving. The kids, which were 29 and 30, a boyfriend, girlfriend, they left island like they couldn't get out of here fast enough. And mom went with. Well, mom came back like 6 months later. She moved down to the island. She was here for a couple of years. And it was kind of surprising. I did not think that she would be the one that would, you know, decide to come move back. So we've lost a lot of friends that have moved since that storm. I just had dinner with some the other day that they put their house up for sale 1.5 years ago, and it's sold, it's under contract, and it was, you know, Cinco de Mayo and his birthday party at the same time, and he was a little drinky, and I was like, aren't you going to miss the island? I mean, like, stateside is so different after you've lived on an island. And he just looked at me and said, I cannot do another hurricane. I can't put my family through that again. So it just took that one for him. Now, to me, I'm like, it's another one of the trade-offs that you're going to, that you just have to live with for living here. And we get way more notice on storms coming here than, say, snowstorms, ice storms, tornadoes, fires, any of the other stuff that can happen up.
Yeah, because you can see it coming for hundreds of miles ahead.
Yeah. Coming, and we know to get prepared, and we know where the safe spots are on the property and what to do. And it, you know, after having a Cat5, the little ones don't scare me at all anymore. It's like, bring it on.
How long was it before you returned where life returned to normal? I know things are a little more difficult down there. The government's not moving as fast. Everybody's got their hands full and hands held out for something in the pie. So how long did it get to get back to normal?
For us, it's odd because we were almost, it's the new normal thing, the word that they like to use, new normal. And that was with us way before COVID hit. We used that new normal. We had not only guests, well, we had workers and guests almost right away.
Yeah.
So it was a little different for us. We had that sense of same day to day with working the business. And, you know, we'd wake up and inside looked fine, and you're like, God, was that just a bad dream? And then you go to the door and it's like, oh my God, here we go again.
Right.
So inside was totally normal and business was totally normal. Computers, internet, electricity, all of that stuff was different. And I think by the time it got back to the more normal, it was kind of a slow process to where you didn't really notice, you were just there.
Yeah.
There's still things that they're working on. I mean, it pushed our island to start getting a little bit more into the 21st century as far as offering more online services, trying to get the antiquated systems updated. They're still working on that. COVID has actually helped a lot more because they had to.
Right.
You know, they could use the excuse of the hurricanes, be like, okay, well, we're like everyone else, so we're going to give you a moratorium on getting licenses done and your vehicle registrations, any of the stuff like that. But you can only use the hurricane as an excuse for so long.
Right.
By the time COVID hit us, our government hadn't really even figured out how to do all this stuff online. They were saying they were,
Yeah.
but there were still tons of glitches. 3 years later, I'm still having issues with getting my business licenses completely where they're supposed to be. Their computers don't talk to each other. And then with COVID, they didn't have, you couldn't even go into the offices. a lot of phone lines were never restored. So like landlines, there's still landlines that are numbers to places that don't work. We had our cell phones, so we were up and running right away. People could get a hold of us.
Right.
So yeah, it's just, you know, if you want to live here, you have to have an awful lot of patience.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone that calls me, like you were saying, did you just up and move down there and find a place? No, you need to come here and you need to spend some time and you need to know that you want to be here.
Right.
There's not an in between. You either love the place or you can't stand it and you can't wait to get off.
Sure.
We've actually been blessed through COVID even. In the beginning, the people that were coming down were rude, and how, I'm trying to find the word I want to use for it. There were people that were trying to escape what was going on up in the States
Mm-hmm.
and coming here because it said US
Yep.
and expecting everything to be US and not reading anything about it.
Right.
And then getting angry with you because the roosters are loud and their internet's not working and I can't do my Zoom meeting, blah, blah, blah. So that was hard. I mean, we had to start taking guests when they allowed it because we had no income.
Yeah.
And we fall through the cracks on everything. We're self-employed. We couldn't get an SBA loan because we live on our property. Just all kinds of silly things that just don't help. You know, we're grateful because we own our place free and clear. So that's the only thing that made us not go belly up. The hurricane, so let's see, the hurricanes were opposite. For us, the hurricanes were good. They were bad for what happened to everyone, but business-wise, it kept us really, we were in a really good spot business-wise. COVID has been bad for almost everyone here.
Yeah. But you've been able to thrive through all of this. You've expanded your portfolio to additional properties, right?
Yeah, that was kind of on a bit of an accident.
Okay.
We hadn't really planned. I mean, we realize as time goes on, living on a property that you are doing vacation rentals on and people knowing they can come knock on your door at any time they want, request anything they want. It's not the same as just like letting someone check in and do their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then having, you know, I've got the rooster here because you have to have one rooster on property to keep all the others away, or it's just a free for all. They're fighting and they're noisy. But there's always going to be roosters crowing everywhere. I've got a hen house. I get a ton of free eggs and I leave them on a table out here for the guests. I say, that's the box on the table there. If there's eggs, help yourself. You can have them. They're for my girls because they lay way too many eggs. Yeah. So, you know, we had been kicking around the idea of trying to find a house, but it's like with the business, it's so hard to find something that fits everything you want. Mm-hmm. And I'm tired. I don't want to build something again. And Randy's tired and he doesn't want to build something. And I kind of fell into a position right before COVID. It's funny because we actually were taking a break. We had last year, January and February were just terrible. We were completely filled, but we had some of the worst travelers I have ever encountered in my life. Kept landing in our lap and they were just sucking the life out of me. It was no fun anymore. Everything was tedious and Randy's heart wasn't in it. I was struggling and I fired Randy. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. You're done. He goes, what do you mean? And I said, by March, you need to start looking for a job. And he goes, I have a job. And I'm like, no, you don't. I just fired you. And he goes, what do you mean? What are we going to do? And I said, I'm not doing vacation rentals anymore. I can't. I need a break. I said, what you're doing, honestly, you keep saying your whole heart, you're putting everything into it. It's not you. And I can tell it's not you. And I would much rather take a break from this place and find us again and find why we moved here than to continue on the path we're at, right? So I had my eye on a house up the hill that was in foreclosure, and I happened to track it down to the company that owned it and found out that they had a bunch more on island, but they had no one to manage them. And I went and checked on another one that had been broken into, and I called the guy and I'm like, you guys you have no idea what you're doing. You can't own properties on an island and not be here.
Right.
And he offered me a job and I was like, I don't need another job, you know, but maybe this is what, if I'm trying to look at something else to do to get away from what we were doing. And I really wanted this one house. And I said, okay, I will take your job if you promise to give me first dibs on this house. And he did, and in the end, he didn't. He put me in a bidding war with someone else, which has happened so many times before. But I'm still managing these houses. And, you know, it's a great opportunity for people. Like if anybody is watching your show and they want to contact me about buying either a hurricane damaged property or a foreclosure.
Yep, you've got them.
There's some really good deals going on here right now. So we had kind of set aside what we wanted to do with this house, and it fell through. And then just out of the blue, a property I had looked at, I'd actually had my eye on it for about 5 years, but it was way out of our price range. It was a foreclosure held by an office here on island, and they just dumped the price on it. And I showed it to Randy, and he's like, what? And so I called the real estate agent and I said, hey, listen, honey, we're really interested in this property, but I'm not going to get into any more bidding wars with anyone. I know it's been around for a long time. I want to know bottom line, what the bank will take for it, what they'll accept. And this is what we can afford without putting us in a bind.
Yep.
So she talked to the bank and we all came to an agreement. And the next thing I knew, this place was sitting in our lap. And it's everything that we said we weren't going to do again. And then some.
And then some. That's great.
There is no livable space right now up there.
Oh my goodness.
It's 24 acres smack dab in the middle of the rainforest, but there's nobody else anywhere around.
Around.
The 400 acres around us is owned by, we know who owns the 400 acres around us. They'll never do anything with it.
Yeah.
And we're just ready to like do a get back to nature thing, I think.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a long haul to get something livable up there. Randy's ready to just go pitch a tent and, you know,
well,
but we don't have the wells going yet. You know, there's
a lot.
We definitely are going to go 100% off grid. It's going to be an eco camp type. There'll be camping and glamping and
fun.
something for us to live in there. I was always infatuated with the sugar mills, and we own 2 sugar mills on our property.
Oh, wow.
And they're both in really good shape. And this particular plot of land, the overseer back in the 1700s that was reporting back to the Queen of Denmark wrote everything in English. So there's all kinds of history and reports written back and forth. Storms, everyone that had been born on the property lived there. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And when you talk, you know, I look at the stuff here in town and think about how they got the building materials 3 blocks up. And then we go up there to this property that takes us 20 minutes to drive to from town. And they built the same kind of structures up there. And you're like, holy cow, how on earth did they do something like that in that remote of a location?
All right. Well, you've been very, very engaging to talk to today, like always. And it's been good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to have you back to get follow-ups on other things, but I got one more question for you that I ask of all my guests. And being the person who's unconventional, I can't even imagine what the answers will be, but we'll go there. So in this world, in the Western culture, we have this idea of a bucket list, okay? Things we want to do before we're done on Earth, right? Well, just like anything in the universe, there's an opposite of everything, okay? So there's things you don't want to do, okay? So that list rhymes with bucket, but starts with an F it. So we're a family show, so the F it list, okay? So I want you to think about what might be on your F it list from the person who's been everything from a bar owner to roller derby to, you know, a resort owner type down there in the Caribbean. What might be an item or 2 that's on your F it list?
I got totally confused on that one. I apologize.
Okay.
I took a sip of water and my brain went. So it's stuff I wouldn't want to do? Yeah,
so an F it list. Things like, hey, no way am I going to do that. So I'll give you 2 examples, okay? Number 1, I'm not doing sardines again. No reason to eat those, okay? Then a few years back, I actually did an episode on this. I went through Lakota Sioux Sweat Lodge, and it was excessive drumming, excessive chanting, excessive heat, excessive humidity, and I'll never do that again. Okay, so that's
the heat and humidity sounds like here all the time.
Add in
list of wants to do.
Add in drumming and chanting. Not going to do that. So what might be an item or 2 that's on your no way F it list?
Gosh, man, that is a hard one because
nobody asked you about that, right? I mean, you know, everybody
no, like
on your bucket list, right? But no, there's
I'm pretty much almost game for anything. Gosh.
I mean, are you going to
And I'm one of those that never says never, but I don't think I would ever try sardines.
Okay, well,
I've smelled them and no.
Okay.
I think I can say no.
But would you sign up for another Cat5?
That is a tough one. We say you know, you don't ever want to go through something like that again. And I feel like we had this, you know, I'm down here because of my father, and I feel my father watched over us while we were here. It could have been so much worse than, I mean, a house next to us gone, and then our place standing, and our neighbors right next door standing, and you know, that probably would be a F it. Yeah, no, no more Cat5s.
Well, thanks for coming on the show today. Love to have you. Great interview. Good to catch up. And
Absolutely.
So folks, we'll call this a wrap for this episode. I doubt we'll ever have roosters crowing again, but that's part of the authenticity of an interview from St. Croix. So love it. So until next time, folks, please don't forget to stop by the show website. There's information about Kathy and her business down there, and all of our guests. That's rexandrewsshow.com. And then also, we'll just wrap it up by saying the three things I say every time. Be safe, but be bold, and make it a great day.